I've completely dried the sheet. If you're in a hurry, you can dry it using a hairdryer. However, I don't recommend using extremely hot air mode, as I can't guarantee that it won't influence light fastness of your paints. Of course, the ideal way to dry paper is the natural way, when you just wait a little, make yourself a cup of tea. Okay, my work has dried, and in order to have a completed impression, we can also do the upper part of the work and paint the forest. Okay, I carefully wet the upper part of the sheet using water, and I try not to go below the horizon line. I immediately cover the piece of the sky visible in the distance. Here we can use a mix of cerulean and ultramarine. There is another good color called Verditer Blue. It's similar to ultramarine but a little whitened. It's not important here. I take a medium brush and mix an olive tone using cadmium yellow and ultramarine. If you prefer a softer, more whitened tint, you can use Naples yellow instead of cadmium yellow. If you feel that this green is too muted, you can add more lemon yellow to it so that it looks more cheerful, more cerulean. If, on the contrary, you want to make it more muted, you can add orange. Combined with ultramarine, it will mute the mix because these colors are complementary and the color will be more natural. I talk more in detail about natural combinations in watercolor and color wheel in my watercolor basics course. This basic knowledge really helps in working with color and, of course, with watercolor technique. Next, I mix the color for shadows. I use ultramarine and a little orange to it, a little yellow, and they give me this complex muted tone. If we add more cerulean to it and maybe cobalt green or phthalo green, we show air depth in the distance. And also a bluer tone in the forest. The important thing is that we don't paint the trees in one tone. The way you work with green tones instantly shows whether you're a novice or a pro. The forest in the distance looks cooler because it's influenced by the light and aerial perspective. Next, I apply the overall shadows. Here we can add more ultramarine and Payne's Gray or indigo, another great color. The particular paint brands and colors don't matter that much in this work. It's more important that you understand the principle where a color should be darker and cooler and where it should be lighter and warmer, and that you can combine warm tones and cool ones of the reflected sky. I continue to apply paints while the sheet is moist so that the work is perceived more whole. Some individual branches glow in the light. We can actually show it Here it depends on your creativity, but here I didn't paint any sharp edges because it's background. If the forest was the key element in this work, I might even use masking fluid to cover some light yellow spots in the tree crowns. But in this case, I'm afraid they'll start to compete with the fine details in the reflection and also the stones in the foreground. So try to make the background generalized enough, yet with green masses and volumes clearly perceived. Well, it's not an easy task. My paper has almost dried, and I add halftones. We can see that the bushes on the right have visible volume. If you look carefully, you'll see the same spheres again that we had pictured. They have light and mid-tone, shadow and possibly reflected light if you look real close. So we also try to give these bushes volume. We don't simply cover it all in green paint. The warm tone of the water side looks beautiful too. We add more orange to it, some warm red hue, whatever you have in your palette. And we apply it to the glowing water side, refine the shadows. These trees will have visible volume against these dark shadows. We can even add some violet tones in the shadows. Well, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I myself love seeing some red or violet tones in the green areas and shadows. I think it looks really expressive. In order to separate the foreground of the bushes, if you look at the bushes, the ones closer to us are more clear. We can use a dry brush with kind of separated hair bunches so that it looks like a fan, and we can try and paint the foliage a bit. But don't overdo it. I think we could actually skip it. Here it also affects the volume perception. I use a dry and clean regular round squirrel brush instead of a fan brush to eliminate sharp edges here. I sometimes use a regular fluffy round brush instead of a fan brush, only because my fan brush may still be a little moist and can leave unsightly lines. I continue to adjust the outlines of the trees. This way it will look more lively and interesting. Such details catch the viewer's eye, and he or she spends more time contemplating your work. And of course, the shadow of the round tree I painted using ultramarine, a little orange to avoid using pure ultramarine, and I use a fine brush to show the tree trunks. Well, all in all, the background is ready.